A busy Friday before training camp for the New York Football Giants. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the Big Blue Banter podcast. It's Nick Filato here, rocking the solo show. Dan, unfortunately, could not jump on, but I wanted to briefly go over the two players the Giants signed today, July 21st, 2023. And those two players are slot wide receiver, we are the slot machine as the New York Giants, Cole Beasley, and running back James Robinson. It was somewhat surprising, but perhaps telling. I, for one, believe the Giants would look to add a linebacker ahead of training camp, with Jarrad Davis sustaining a torn ACL that left the starting spot opposite Okereke entrusted to either Micah McFadden or Darian Beavers. I thought maybe the Giants would look to call Deion Jones back to compete with the second-year players, but that wasn't the case, and I heard that the Giants, right before I recorded this, brought in Sam Egovoen and Nick Vigil to possibly make the roster, so we'll detail that, Dan and I, on a future episode if the Giants end up signing them over the weekend. But around noon today, Friday, news broke that the Giants added Beasley to the team, and about 20 minutes later, the Robinson addition was announced. Let's start with Beasley, though. The 34-year-old wide receiver had his best seasons in Buffalo under Brian Daboll. Beasley spent the first 7 years of his career as a Cowboy, gross, I know, where he caught 319 passes for 5,744 yards with 34 touchdowns. He left Dallas, went to Buffalo, and had 3 consecutive 100-target seasons with Josh Allen in Brian Daboll's offense from 2019 to 2021. He left the Bills early last season, had a cup of coffee with Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, flirted a bit with the Giants, retired, and then returned to the Bills for the playoffs. In his 3 seasons with Buffalo, he caught 233 passes for 2,456 yards with 11 touchdowns. He was a quick safety valve for Josh Allen and had a knack for finding space in zone coverage in the short to intermediate parts of the field. As we know, that was very important in the Giants system last season. Players like Daniel Bellinger, Richie James, and Isaiah Hodgins even did very well when they were tasked with that assignment. James is now a Chief, and the Giants added slot-type receivers such as Paris Campbell and Jamison Crowder in free agency, and rookie Jalen Hyatt in the draft. However, Beasley's rapport and experience with Daboll are important factors that make him more attractive than other receivers who were available. Still, it appears that could signify something else with the current Giants receivers. Dan and I speculated on previous episodes, due to OTA and minicamp reports, as well as the timeline of the knee injury, that Wan'Dale Robinson may start his time this season with the Giants on the physically unable to perform list, or the PUP. This means a player cannot practice or play because of an injury entering training camp. Players who are currently on the list are allowed to do everything with the team except practice. If a player is still on the list at the beginning of the season, they must remain there for 4 weeks. This means they cannot practice or play during the first 4 weeks of the season. It is worth noting that after those 4 weeks have expired, teams have a 3-week window to activate the player, release them, or place them on injured reserve, allowing them to sign a replacement. The signing of Beasley indicates that Wan'Dale Robinson may end up on the PUP, which isn't a surprise, but it could also indicate that Sterling Shepard, who is recovering from a torn ACL suffered against the Dallas Cowboys in Week 3, may also end up on the PUP. And I know reports suggested that Shepard was moving around well at OTAs and minicamp, so maybe I'm reading too far into this situation, but it's sensible, especially given Shepard's extensive injury history, that it's okay to at least surmise that that may happen. And if that's the case, then the Giants would enter camp with 13 wide receivers still, and the slot snaps would predominantly be divided between Beasley, Crowder, Campbell, Khalil Pimpleton, Jaden Mickens, and, of course, Jalen Hyatt. The more snaps, the more reps, better for that raw rookie. I get it. People have mixed feelings about Cole Beasley, but Daboll knows him well. He obviously trusts him. And even though the Giants are the slot machine right now, there may be snaps for a player like Beasley insofar as Wan'Dale Robinson and Shepard land on the PUP, especially if any of the players previously mentioned suffer an injury in training camp, which, due to the rigors of the NFL, that could possibly happen. And if those injuries don't plague the Giants, and I'm knocking on wood right now, then I don't think Beasley will make this team. But it's better to cross your T's and dot your I's now before training camp than later on a truncated timeline. Not only is Beasley reuniting with Daboll, he's also rejoining Isaiah Hodgins, who tweeted in elation about the bees, as he said, joining Big Blue. And I know, it's a crowded wide receiver room, but it's a cheap, familiar face who should quickly assimilate into the system while assisting the quick passing attack that New York successfully employed down the stretch of the season last year. All right, Enough with the guy who eerily resembles Dwight from The Walking Dead. Let's move on to the second signing. Another Robinson, James Robinson, formerly of the Jacksonville Jags and the New York Jets. This signing is not a surprise after Saquon Barkley and the Giants could not come to a long-term deal, resulting in an unsigned franchise tag by the star running back. This left a void at the running back position, and the Giants had to fill that void. They chose the 24-year-old, 5'9", 219-pound, 2020 UDFA out of Illinois State. And Robinson has a cool story. Undrafted, he set records as a high school running back in Illinois, but he went and played for an FCS program where, again, he dominated with 4,444, that's a lot of fours, career rushing yards, which ranked second in school history at Illinois State. Robinson latched on to the Jaguars roster, where they still had a former top 5 pick in the 2017 draft, Leonard Fournette, at running back. Jacksonville declined Fournette's fifth-year option, and the former LSU standout grudgingly went through training camp. The Jags tried to trade him, but no one bit, so they released Fournette at the start of the season, leaving an assortment of young UDFAs at running back. Darway, Ogunbowale, Devine Ozigbo, Nathan Cottrell, and James Robinson. And it was Robinson who carpe diem that situation throughout training camp, prompting head coach Doug Marrone to name him the starter in Week 1. And he quickly got to work. He recorded 16 carries for 62 rushing yards and a reception in which he leaped over Colts safety Kyrie Willis for 28 yards in a 27-20 victory in his first professional game. Robinson became the fourth undrafted rookie running back to start Week 1 since 1970 and set the record for most rushing yards for an undrafted rookie in Week 1. Robinson rushed for 1,070 yards with a 4.5 yards per carry average and 7 rushing touchdowns to go with 49 catches for 344 yards with 3 receiving touchdowns in his rookie season. Robinson is the fourth undrafted player in NFL history to rush for 1,000 yards in his rookie season, following Dominic Rhodes, LeGarrette Blount, and Philip Lindsay. Robinson was productive in his second season before he tore his Achilles tendon in Week 16 against the Jets, who, ironically enough, traded for the running back after Breece Hall's injury in 2022. Robinson only had 29 carries for 89 yards through 4 games with the Jets last season. It's a little bit uninspiring, but he's recovering from an Achilles injury. He had 2,177 yards with a 4.5 yards per carry average and 18 rushing touchdowns in his 35 games with Jacksonville. He also added 91 catches on 120 targets for 617 yards with 5 touchdowns through his professional career. Even though Robinson is young, he's not overly fast. He's a calculated runner. He's smart, understands when and how to hit the hole, and he has this low center of gravity, provides good contact balance for him when he's running in between the tackles, and he runs low behind his pads. However, he only averaged 3.9 yards per carry last season with the Jags and the Jets, so there are still questions about the lasting effects from the Achilles tear. This is a good opportunity for Robinson, even if Saquon Barkley returns. If Robinson continues to surprise and conquers the obstacles, as he did often early in his career, maybe there's a roster spot available for him. He'll at least have a shot. However, his lack of experience on special teams will certainly impede him. Both Beasley and Robinson aren't exciting additions per se. Beasley is older, long in the tooth, if you will. Robinson is now a year removed from the devastating injury, but was never really that fast of a player. His max speed last season was 19.7 miles per hour, and his career max speed is 20.3 miles per hour. That 19.7 mile per hour number, that was on the 4th and 1 run in the second half, 50 yards, I believe it was, 13 personnel, a strong side counter run in the Jags' Week 3 38-10 upset victory over the Chargers. That wouldn't be the only time the Jags upset the Chargers last season if we remember back to the playoffs. But for Robinson and Beasley, there are paths to this roster. Maybe those paths aren't clear right now, but a lot can happen in a week of intense practice, and we'll certainly be covering it all here on the Big Blue Banter podcast. And to be clear, I don't necessarily think they will make the roster, but injuries happen. And if they really prove themselves, especially in Robinson's case, who is still young, I wouldn't be shocked if a running back gets injured that James Robinson ends up making this team, even with Saquon Barkley coming back, as I said a little bit earlier. So I think it's a little bit interesting from that standpoint. And just the familiarity of Beasley is also something that I feel like is noteworthy. But Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you have not done so already, please like, comment, and subscribe to the podcast on YouTube. It's usually not just my dumb face sitting here talking. Dan Schneider just couldn't make it. He's always on here with me. Please go through our feed. We have a bunch of good content I'm sure you will enjoy if you're new to the podcast. But we'll be back next week, and we're both very excited to cover the 2023 New York Giants. Take care, everyone, and have a lovely day.